Welcome to the Best Hour of Their Day podcast with your host, Jason Fernandez.
And me, Jason Ackerman. With more than 20 years in the business,
As both coaches and affiliate owners,
our passion is to help create world-class affiliates
and coaches by building
better boxes. Welcome to
the best hour of your day.
Fern. We teach at level 2s around the world. Around the world, we've taught at level 2s, we've taught level 1s, and
That was really quick. All right, you just dove right in there. That was really quick.
I dove in. I dove into it today. Part of it is you're frozen, so I can't really tell what you're doing right now. You're frozen. We're having computer issues this morning, aren't we, Katie?
Yeah, seems that way.
Fern's-
It's frozen and he's smiling though. That's good.
It's
That's a
so
nice
unusual. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing to see him smiling. But I did dive right in. And that's because it's a topic that we want to discuss. And what I was going to say is that level 2s, we kick off the weekend with this idea of foundations of effective coaching. And there's 6 criteria, which you've heard us talk about at length: teaching, seeing, correcting, group management, demonstration, presence, and attitude. Now, we're not here to break all 6 of those down. You can listen to past episodes. We've talked about it. You can, of course, attend your level 2 and learn more about it. I've put up plenty of posts on my Instagram about those 6 criteria. But I want to take one small blip of correcting. Fern dropped off, Katie. He doesn't know.
Oh, there
He's back. I was going to say it's because he's worried that he doesn't know anything about this subject, so he wants me to just run with
He's
it.
just letting
Now
you
what's going
take
on,
it.
Fern?
You're muted also,
And now
friend.
he's-
We're struggling.
Well, it defaults to mute. About being relentless?
Your life should default to mute. That'd be
That's
great
not
if every time we see.
That's not
if every
even a
time
good
we saw
joke.
people.
If
every time
I tell you what, if the level of relentlessness that is required to deal with you on a daily basis has no peer, has no peer. I mean, everybody's just like, hey, what's the hardest thing you've ever done in your life? It's not like being in the military. It's not deploying to third world countries. It's not having a child in the hospital for months on end. It's none of those things. It's not like being a single parent for a year. It's dealing with you on a daily basis.
I like how you had to first make us try to feel sorry for you. Like,
No. I'm saying
look
that
at
all
the
of those.
hardships I've had in my life.
All of those pale, and I was fine with all of those. Those are like, oh, whatever, man. But getting on a phone call with you on a daily basis, I'm like, considering not doing this anymore.
How about this camera? If you're watching me on YouTube right now, how about this?
Yeah. How about
Very
it?
fancy.
How about, just like most things, Jay is last to the party.
Look at Katie's camera.
Okay.
And
Not
she's been there
quite last.
before. She's
Not
been there.
quite last.
She has it.
All right.
I tell you what, she could set it up on her own if I asked her to.
Yeah. And I will set it up.
She's not
And-
going to FaceTime 4 people in order to figure out how to plug it in.
Katie,
Yeah.
let it be known. And if Devin, if you're listening, our man Devin, CrossFit Control, I was trying to get on topic and get moving.
I mean, there's first time for everything. It's just,
And
I mean, it's
let
not
me
really New
also
Year's
say-
yet. It's not really New Year's yet, but I appreciate you trying to turn over a new leaf.
I don't think there's a wrong time to have a resolution. I don't think you need to wait till January 1st.
I got an idea. Here's a resolution. Before you ask us if we have certain things, you should look. Yeah.
I
Hey,
was
do
on
we
a
have
call.
this? Do we have? I know you are. That was a random thought that you had no filter that just escaped your mind before you're able to like do a sanity check on it. At which point I was like, you should put that back in there. Just put it back in there.
I didn't shit myself today.
It's good.
Maybe
You have
that's the
socks on.
tattoo we're
Do
gonna
you have
get.
socks on? Do you have socks on?
We're
One
gonna
at
maybe
least.
we're gonna get that tattoo on one arm. It'll say, "Did I put my socks on?" On the other arm, it'll say, "Did I shit myself?"
Did I show? Did I show?
And if you
myself?
could answer yes and no to at least one. anyway, I was trying to keep this reeled in, despite Fern sending me messages on our Slack channel, trying to get me fired up.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got that. Actually, I got it late last night, and I figured I would push it your way just so that you could wake up in a hot mood.
It woke me up in a hot mood. But anyway, what I was getting at, we talk about correcting, and within correcting, there's 4 things that we break down. A, you need to have cues, period. You need to have a cue. This is correcting a movement. Step 1, have a cue. Step 2, have a variety of those cues. And that means verbal, visual, tactile, at a minimum 3, but ultimately you need dozens, if not hundreds of cues for every fault that we might see, the majority of those are going to be verbal. Your visual one will always be, hey, you're doing X, I want you to do Y. And your tactile, you'll have a handful for every fault as well of tactile. Then we talk about, okay, now that you have a variety of cues, we need to triage faults. We need to determine, okay, what's the primary fault at hand, or which fault do we want to fix first? For example, typically you refer to safety. Someone's losing their midline. That's probably what we're going to address first. However, there are times someone's losing their midline, but their knees are also caving in, and maybe we need to address their knees in order to fix the midline. Okay, now we get to step 4, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. Step 4, at some point through all of this, we then have to balance relentlessness and praise. So this term of relentlessness, Fern, it's near and dear to my heart, because when I got my level 2, and then even on seminar staff for years, I was always getting feedback of, I need to be more relentless. How about you?
No, I knew what I was doing when they said you need to be more relentless. They're like, you should study up. No, I think just the idea of relentlessness is fairly abstract if we don't really try to define that. And we've talked about this a little bit in previous podcasts, but I think most people immediately will default the idea of relentlessness with negative connotation, meaning just stay on people no matter what at all costs. And the further I get into this, the better understanding I have of the idea, and that's not really what we're saying. There's a line in the sand, right? There's a minimum requirement for relentlessness, which is, did you do anything? Like, have you engaged in the fault or the need for correction in any way, shape, or form, visual, verbal, tactile, whatever. Like, you have to do something. And then after that is, if we were to make it very simple, have you done your best? Right? Stick with the forum agreements. Have you done your best? Have you exhausted all means of doing that? Right? You should be able to do that fairly quickly in a class setting. Like, that idea of exhausting all means is not as drawn out as it might sound. It's not, break out the, every, anatomy and physiology book that you've ever looked at and try to go through every possible movement assessment known to man. That could just mean, hey, have I given it multiple tries? Have I said, hey, push your knees out? The next time I come by, have I given them a tactile cue? And then have I said, next time, did I show them, like, your knees look like this, I want you to look like that? That for me checks the box for relentlessness. We can argue, we have a safe assumption here that there's something deeper that needs to happen. And we may or may not be able to get to that in the context of the 1 hour. Right. So that's the first aspect of it. And then after that, it's like, well, being relentless doesn't necessarily mean just hounding people on movement. Being relentless can mean just continue to interact with the athlete on multiple levels, whether it's, affirmation of good mood, whether it's challenging them strategically, whether it's talking a little bit of mindset, whether it's getting them to scale more appropriately. We've talked about, like Joe Rogan's things, like, there's levels to everything. There's levels to relentlessness. Some of it is with regard to movement. It could be strategery. Some of it could be, the psychological aspect of it. So if you're armed and you're prepared to kind of dip your toe in those different baskets as you go through, it's really hard to not constantly interact with people throughout the class, at which point we could objectively say that you're relentless because you're constantly engaging in the betterment of the athlete. And we could leave it vague as in betterment of the athlete, because it's not just that we're talking about.
That's really the topic at hand, right? It's, yes, being relentless is pushing the athlete, but then that balancing of relentlessness and praise is, and part of this stems from a conversation in our coaches development group. One of the women in the group, Ryan, typically coaches her son, who's 11 or 12 years old, a complete goofball as far as movement. We call him a baby giraffe. He has no idea where his body is in space. And, she did a really nice job on a video we watched of balancing this idea of, like, I'm trying to get this kid better, but I also don't want to frustrate him. And right. And part of that is, all of the criteria for being an effective coach, there's always overlap, right? And part of that is, we talk about in both group management and presence and attitude. So what is group management? People just think it's like, oh, I control my members when they move, or what they're on the warm up, they're on the cool down, etc. Yeah, that's kind of a very broad brush vision of it. But really, group management allows you to check in with your members, check in with your athletes. And part of that is like, am I overwhelming them? Did I check in with them? Did I already give them a cue here? And then when it comes to presence and attitude, it's the reason I think presence and attitude is so valuable is because you can hide being relentless while keeping it fun if you have good presence and attitude. And some of that may be joking. Some of that may be, just how you connect with that person, tying it into something in their lives. But understanding when I'm pushing someone hard enough to get them better and finding that line of, okay, if I push them too hard, whether it's another rep or another cue, they're going to fall apart.
Yeah, it's just the idea of saturation, it might help here, meaning let's just give a number, right? So 10 cues, right? 10 cues given over the course of 60 minutes is entirely different than 10 cues given over the course of 5 minutes. Given over the minutes might seem annoying, might seem combative, might have lots of friction involved with it. 10 cues given over the course of an hour might not even be noticeable and get a totally different outcome. So sometimes it's just like, hey, like know what you're going to get, or minimum effective dose right now, and then circle back once they've kind of forgotten about it and address it again in a different way. In addition to, how, we've talked about this before, like how you say things matters, and the way you address it. And I've talked about, hey, there's a difference between telling somebody to do something, telling somebody to do something, and asking them to do something. And we had a long conversation about this in the recent CDP I ran. And Matt, one of the coaches here, is pretty experienced. It's like he's got some hours underneath his belt, and we were talking about this idea of relentlessness because I challenged him in the class. Like, logistics were good, he's interacting with people, and I said, listen, man, I want you to be more relentless because I think you can improve movement. And so then this kind of snowballed into this larger conversation. He's like, well, I don't want to annoy them. To which my response is typically, well, then don't annoy them. Like, it's not required to be annoying to continue to interact. You can have conversations with people, you can continue to engage, but here's what's annoying, right? It's so sometimes it's like, hey, what is it? And then we can talk about how to avoid it with the idea of relentlessness. We've said it before. People get annoyed or feel like they're being picked on when you don't cue anybody else. So again, 10 cues in 5 minutes given to one person in a class of 15. Listen, everybody is aware that there is zero equity involved here with regard to cues. Also, too small of a time frame. Okay. Then how you say it matters. Hey, Jay, drive your knees out. Drive your knees out. Nope, still your knees are still in. Yep, push those. Nope, they're still not out. Drive your knees out, Jay. Nope, push them outward, not inward. Jay, push them out. Like, that's annoying. So maybe change the dialogue, change the verbiage.
It's funny because it is, as you're saying that to me, it's only one I want to say about the coach you just mentioned. Sometimes, like, no different than box owners afraid to increase rates. It's like you're putting that perception of your value there. And same holds true with that coach. It's annoying if you think it's annoying. And if you do it in an annoying fashion, yeah, it is. But when you were just giving me those cues and I was listening, I didn't think it was annoying, to be quite honest. And I think most of what you say is annoying. So it's
right.
It's strange to me that
I can be relentless while getting you to push your knees out.
Yeah. So it's but the picture that I'm trying to create there and paint is everybody's different and everyone interprets something different. If you sat there and like, nope, knees out, push them out harder, blah, blah, blah. And I'm doing a set of 5 back squats and I know my knees come in. I'm like, yeah, I would get annoyed more so from the sense of he's right. Fuck, I'm trying. Right. But it wouldn't annoy me in the fact that you're coaching, but you might have the person next to me lose their mind and be like, go away, Fern. Like, let me just squat. So, and that goes back to, I think, you get knowing your athletes.
Well, and this is where I was going to go with that. And this is understanding tone and tenor. So I know people will brush over this, but the tone with which I say something, if I say something really snappy versus if I can maybe draw it out, meaning just like the duration of the cue. So if I say, Jay, push your knees out, right? Versus, Jay, go ahead and push those knees out just a little bit. Those are totally different tone and would be received differently. So understanding tone and tenor. And this is where I think self-awareness, and this carries over into demonstration. We've talked about, RBF and RDF and how just looking annoyed all the time. Having awareness that might be my posture and my facial expression would lend itself to changing it and interacting with people differently. So if you're a coach and you're like, well, that's just my face. Well, my response is, well, just fix it, because nobody likes it.
Right. Your face may look like that, but you could smile. You could smile.
So I don't care if that's what your face looks like. Smile. Like we were at a level 2, and there was a young coach there, big kid. I mean, he's probably, and I say kid because he's, early 20s. He's probably 6'3", solid build. He's got long hair. He's in a ponytail and just looks angry. And halfway through one of the breakouts, I was like, hey, man, you're already scary enough. Just smile. Just smile, dude. You're not making it easier for anybody here. Like, just smile, dude. And he was just like, I know. And I'm like, well, then do it, dude. Like this is a big part of you being an educator or a teacher, is people have to be open to interacting with you. So if that could be the barrier to your ability to be relentless, because if my posture and my facial expressions and my tone would never in any instances love to continued interaction with somebody, well, then this is a dead stop. So I can't even get to all these other things where I might have to dig in on myself in order to be relentless. It's not about, the athlete is not responding to my cues. Why are they not responding to your cues? Are they not responding to your cues? Well, then fix that. Whether it's your face or your tone or your posture. If you're giving cues standing in one place, with your in your arms crossed and looking closed off, good luck. Getting interaction with people. Like, it's not happening. And again, if your contention is, well, that's just how I operate.
That's just
well,
me.
then you're just because that's not positive. And again, it's not about interacting. And if you think about engagement, I've had some pretty my life throughout sports, baseball, basketball, football, however, whatever sport you want to, and track. But even coaches that were really aggressive, that might have been like scary, they were constantly engaged. And I was just like, this dude doesn't hate me. He's just really involved in what it is that I'm doing. Now, some of them, I was like, this guy legit hates me. And that's fine. You just deal with it. CrossFit's different, where I don't have to do that. I can go to another gym. But in this instance, if you're trying, people will get that you're trying. And then there's other things that you can do to fix that. But the idea is continued engagement is what we're referring to when we say be relentless. And that may mean, to give some more practical examples, let's say you're teaching the push jerk progression and you've got an athlete that knows how to do the push jerk. So as you go through the jump, land, and punch portion of the push jerk, they're kind of mailing it in, right? They're jumping, they're landing, but we would describe it as like slow and soft. Okay. Way to be relentless with that athlete is like, hey, Jay, let's move a little here. I want you to punch those arms overhead. I know you're faster than that, right? At which point the next rep, I'll get something.
Can't you,
right.
For the listeners, like, I want them to recognize, like, because I think a lot of times we brush over things. It's like you went from a doldrum tone to a tone of like excitement, and one that expresses, oh, this dude actually cares. And, I wanted to say, like, if we think back to all of our high school coaches or college or, whatever it is now, if you're at an affiliate, the ones that you think back on with great respect and appreciation are the ones that care. And I just want to add, like, I think kind of what you're saying is, enthusiasm goes a long way. Connecting with your athlete goes a long way, and showing them you care. We've talked about imposter syndrome. We've talked about females coaching, males. We've talked about small men, such as myself, coaching larger, stronger men. And I think,
like me.
I don't know. You saw that back squat? Did you see that back squat?
I saw something. I don't know if it was a back squat. It looked like kind of like a good morning. Yeah, it looked like a good morning.
I call it a good morning squat.
Yeah, it was a hip hinge.
I'm trying to get my low back strong. But my point is, I think with all of those, one of the things that we rely on is, hey, care, right? If Tia, Frazier, Justin, Medeiros is training at your box and you're like, man, that dude's fit, I can't offer them anything. But you saw something and you're like, hey, dude, I know you're the games athlete, but I did notice you like shifted a little bit on your toes. If you do this, maybe it'll help, right? And just the way you approach them. Like, and at that point, if it's like, hey, asshole, I won the games, then it's like, cool, you're an asshole. That's not you anymore. There's a point when it's like, I did my best. I did it in a nice way. You're going to have athletes and members that, and that's your responsibility. Mental note, Justin's a dick. Or mental note, Justin's doing 18 workouts today and he's a little tired. Mental note, Justin had a big fight with his significant other. Let me give him a little bit of grace today, right? So it's a little, it's connecting with your, I mean, that's what coaching is, right? Connecting with your athletes.
Right. But I'm trying to be empathetic here with regard to, I know that doesn't, like, not everybody has seen that. So not everybody was an athlete growing up. Like, and I don't mean like, at
Division One,
just mean
Division One.
Played athletics. I mean, everybody had a coach that was a good example, or has been in locker rooms where critical feedback is part of the interaction with regard to dealing with other teammates.
That's a big thing, right? I think
it's huge.
All joking aside, we grew up with athletics, and it's like, I've told the story about how my coach reamed me out after winning a match. Like, if you're not used to that, like, oh shit, I've got to get better. When you go to CrossFit and all of a sudden you're getting coached, it could be overwhelming. That's something to be aware of.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with that. Is I've had coaches who get on me because they know what I'm capable of, and they'll say, "Hey, get there, like get to that
Katie,
spot."
Could you keep track of how many times in this episode Fern has dropped a humble brag? Let's just reiterate. Let me just go back. I'm going to repeat what you said. I've had coaches get on me because they know how good I am. They know how good I am.
That's not what I said at all, actually. So what I said was they know what I was. They know what I was capable of, right? So that actually didn't express any degree of efficacy or greatness, by the way. It's just like, I might be capable of very little, and they're just like, come on, dude, like, give us something. So but the point is, if an athlete can move better, then it's my job to engage them in a fashion that would get them to move better. So like, there's just days when you're worn out and maybe you're not diving on a loose ball, and the coach is like, get on that. Like, you need to get that. And I'm like, damn it. I'm like, you're right. I do. I'm tired, and it doesn't matter. Like, I gave up. Like, I mailed that in. I let fatigue win. And then you're right. So in that instance, I'm not mad at the coach. However, not all athletes have that mindset. Some athletes will feel picked on in that instance. So this is going back to what you said earlier, is you have to know your athlete. You have to know who can get ribbed. You have to know who can get yelled at. You have to know who needs praise and who needs massaging, and who you need to, described, like, you need to flank them in this scenario. Like, head-on conflict is not going to work, but getting them, in some sort of Jedi fashion to get them to do something, it might be the strategy there. But all of that circles back to just having some self-awareness about, like, what is my interaction going to be with these people? Does it need to be over the top positive? Whether it's a mom who's postpartum, who's just trying to get herself into the gym, and I'm not going to give her a hard time. I'm going to be like, I'm going to just joke around with her largely so that she feels comfortable in the facility. And all she knows is that I'm just happy that she's here and she's moving, versus I might have an athlete who, has some sort of competitive aspirations, at which point I'm like, you can't move like that, dude. Let's go. Move faster. Like, snappy elbows. Like, you're not going to snatch 5, with those lazy ass elbows. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
You have to know that, and know when to praise and when to give critique.
Yeah. And I personally think that's the area that I've developed the most of. Like, back when I first started coaching CrossFit, it was like, this is my energy, my attitude, and how I like to be coached. So I'm going to coach everybody like that. And it was a lot of, like, ball busting, like you said, like getting at people. And then you're like, not everyone can handle a joke or wants a joke like I'm used to. And I have to tweak that. And I have to tweak my delivery. When you're having
or understands my sense of humor, or has a relationship where that is with everybody.
Yeah. And, and a conversation or cueing, which is basically a conversation, takes place between two people. And it's
right.
A, how are you delivering the message? And B, how are they receiving it? And you can deliver the most well thought out, intended, even well said message, and it can just get interpreted wrong. We've all experienced that, whether it's inside the box or with a partner, right? Like, I say something, I'm like, how did you even get there? I mean, I have that conversation once a week with my wife. I'm sure you do. And Katie, it's like, oh, I didn't, you took that completely different than I, intended it. And you have to, you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah. So just having tools that would allow you to be relentless. So one is just understanding it's not always just continue to correct the same thing over and over. Some of that can be just continue.
What is up with Fern? He just fell off the call?
He did. He was in mid-sentence.
It was lucky for us and the listeners.
Yeah.
Nothing productive or intelligent was going to be said.
You're muted, Fern.
You're muted, Fern. For the record,
default time. It's not my internet. It's my just kept cutting off like completely.
You are still choppy. But I think what you were kind of getting. Oh, actually, I'm not sure what you were getting at. But we'll repeat what you were going to say if you can, or not. Anyway,
I forgot. I'll be honest with you.
He was starting to talk about how when in relentlessness, instead of saying the same thing over and over again, change what you're saying or change the delivery of it.
Well, and let's dig in on that topic, Fern, for a moment, assuming you can hear me and assuming you're not frozen. Where do you draw that line? Because, I'll give you an example. For those that didn't see my back squat yesterday, I had 342.5 for a single.
And a half. Somebody was really asking for some praise here.
It's 1.25 pound plates.
Got it. Yep. Got it.
Anyway, my knees definitely came in on the squat. So where would you find that balance of being relentless and letting someone move on? Like where are you like, all right, I gave him the knees out cue. Okay, I gave him a tactile cue, hands on the outside. All right, I showed him, he's not doing it. Like, and now you have to kind of remove from the fact, that was a very heavy single. I was under load. So certainly one of the first things you would do if you were trying to fix me is back the load off, right? But that wasn't the intention there.
Maybe, but so then I would quit. So assuming that I would have a little bit more context here in this scenario, but 342.5 or 5/8 or whatever it was that you were doing is what percentage of a 1 rep max for you?
Well, I don't know what my
90?
current 1 rep is. It's 80%. That'd be crazy. I would say my best is probably within 20 pounds of that, maybe 365.
Right. So you're like 95+%.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that instance, some of the expectation is that there is going to be deterioration of movement at top end strength. Right. So it's just like context, right? You're not going to, the idea is, yes, we would like to move perfectly at 100%. The likelihood of that is very low. Right. Even for world-class lifters, the likelihood of impeccable movement at the margins is unlikely. So right. Context matters. And then we talk about this at the level 2, when we talk about the common movement themes lecture, and we wrap that up with context. Who is this athlete? What are they doing? So if your knees come in at 97.5% of your back squat, I don't know what I'm going to say there. I'm going to be like, hey, push those knees out. But am I going to harp on it? No, because it's 97.5%. Like, hey, great job getting that lift in, fighting it out. The real goal there was like heavy as fuck, so we can get some sort of neuroendocrine response in order to continue to get stronger. At which point, 6 months from now, that lift will look way cleaner. So having the context involved there. Now, if you are a new athlete who has, limited training experience or a training age of 0 or something like that, then I'm going to back that lift off. I'm like, hey, we need to move a little bit better so I can see what's going on here. Maybe you don't understand what's happening, but this again, this is an example of relentlessness. For me, coaching you in that scenario, what I would do, this is not a joke, not shocking to anybody either, is I would ridicule you.
Go ahead. Let's role play. Okay.
I would ridicule you.
42.5.
I'm like, hey, great job getting your knees to touch while touching 97.5%. At which point you would try to move better in an attempt to tell me to shut my face, because that would be our interaction. But I know that, right? I wouldn't say that to Christina, who's my 67-year-old in here, who, if her knees are touching, I'm like, hey, let's back that off. Like that's unnecessary. This is unsafe at this point.
But I think what you're also, I mean, you're saying a few things there. You're saying, I know my audience. I know it's Jay. I know he knows he needs to push his knees out, but I also recognize this is really heavy and he probably can't at this weight. And that's okay. Your 1 rep max doesn't need to be perfect, but dude, you need to be thinking about that going
Right.
forward. And, and maybe in this scenario, be like, hey, Jay, strip off, 100 pounds there, leave 245 on, and let's do a set of 5. And let's
great job. Let's do a drop set here and clean that up.
Yeah. And that's a unique example. Say it was 135 mid Metcon, and I'm doing, sets of 10, 5 rounds of 10 back squats, 20 burpees, call it.
And we're in round 2. I'm like, strip the bar. What?
Yeah, you would, depending on who it like, right, but knowing me, right, because it's relative to the load. Okay, 135 now we can say is like, 30-40% of your best. I'm gonna make you drive those knees out.
If it's at 30 to 40% and at 20% of the volume, and it's already problematic, the context matters. Like where are we going? What are you trying to achieve? And if I'm giving you the cues and there's no response, there has to be some alternative means of intervention, which might be strip the bar down, dude. Like, hey, you should have gone 115 like I told you to. I know you don't like to listen. However, now I'm right, and here we are.
Yeah. But, and again, there's all different contexts because that's what coaching is. It's not in a vacuum. It's not always going to be, well, I'm just calling out reps with PVC. It's going to be mid-workout. It's going to be mid-heavy day. It's going to be during the warm-up or, during the specific warm-up. It has many different looks depending on what the goal is, what the workout is, and who that person is. But big picture is, so let's wrap this up with like, what are some of the things you look for to determine, am I balancing this idea of relentlessness and praise? In other words, at some point you have to be willing to move on knowing that person's not perfect.
The probably the number one thing that I'm looking for as a coach is some sort of affirmative response to whatever it is that we're talking about, right?
Like
whether it's push
some sort of improvement.
Maybe not even improvement, but affirmative response that you are trying and that you acknowledge that we're on the same page about this. So it could be like a head nod. It could be, gotcha, coach. It could be, I'll get it on the next one. It could be, I'm feeling slow, but something that is a reciprocation of what I've thrown out there. Like you're sending something back to give me the feedback to say, hey, I'm either on target or we're pretty far apart right now. And I need to figure out an alternate means of getting to where we need to go. So that's what I'm looking for. And it's reading other people. It's reading facial expressions, body posture. Do they look annoyed? Do they just pretend like you don't exist?
That's a good one.
Like that.
You need to get better as a coach of recognizing that look of annoyance.
This was one that used to drive me insane for newer coaches, that the general lack of like social cue awareness with regard to social cues.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, how did you not know that Susan was burning a hole into your heart when you were giving her those cues? You at no point did you pick up that she would throw you in front of a train rather than have you continue this interaction? And there's like, I wasn't paying attention. I'm like, right, this is part of coaching. You have to know when to say when and where you've gone too far, because at the point where they're no longer, we've said this time and time again, the only thing that matters with regard to feedback, whether it's a cue or giving a coach feedback or whatever, is it received? That's it. That is the only metric by which we could designate success. Was it received?
That's a good point.
So,
but let me ask you this. How do you develop that muscle? Like, it took me a long time. So A, you have to recognize it. B, you have to give a shit that they are actually getting annoyed. And then C, you have to then change your course of action, really. Like, because that might look like, oh shit, he's annoyed. Hey, keep doing what you're doing. Or he's annoyed. I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle.
Well, I think this is what separates people who want to be professionals and people who are doing this for leisure or thought they wanted to do it. And we have this conversation regularly here where people want to do the internship here, but then are a little taken back by the degree or the level at which we want them to do it. And they were like, oh, I thought this was going to be fun. I'm like, it will be fun one day. Right now, this will not be fun, right? Because you're pretty awful at most things. And this is going to require a lot of introspection. You're going to have to do a lot of work. You're going to have to work on your people skills. You're going to have to listen to me tell you that you suck at stuff for a while, because you suck right now. I'm not mad at you, but I'm also not going to tell you that you're doing a good job if you suck, So I think that is it. I think that is like being willing to go in there and dive in there and put yourself out there, because there is no instance where you do this and don't like offend people and don't have people hate you for a little bit and don't get like negative reactions and don't fall on your face. That's just it. Like what you said earlier, it's just like, it takes a long time. If you think about the number of personal interactions that you and I have both had, both inside the affiliate and in the seminar setting, you get really good at reading people's reactions. Or you don't get to do the job anymore because you suck now. You very quickly start to pick up and be like, I'm going to leave Susie alone here for a second and I'll circle back here. Because if I hit her one more time, she's going to like step out of the group or we're going to have a conflict.
Yeah. And I think seminar staff, we're pretty privileged in the fact that being on seminar staff is kind of like going into hyperspeed or hyperdrive on your coaching, because you're just
Correct.
thrown into it. Like you just said, it becomes pretty easy to recognize when your members are annoyed because you see them every day or a few times a week. Right. On staff, we have to be able to
a different story.
Yeah, because we have to be able to recognize that within a minute of a stranger. And I tell you what, like if you get good at that, obviously most people listening to this are coaching at their affiliate, not on seminar staff. But if you get good at that at your affiliate, you're going to get good on it in the real world. And that's a great way to practice. I mean, and connecting, I saw my buddy Ron is doing, I guess, like when you do the, that hard 75 thing.
I've heard of it. I've never done it before.
Yeah, of course. You do the easy 75, which is just what's the minimum Fern can do every day.
Right. Why would I not take the easy route?
Well, I think as you advance it, and I'm speculating, I see like there's more steps. Like it starts like read, exercise, eat right, whatever. And then as you do it multiple times, more challenges get thrown out there. And he had a challenge that says like talk to a stranger every day. That was part of the new, like whatever iteration of Hard 75 he was on. And I messaged him. I'm like, dude, are you really talking to a stranger every day? Because I think it's bullshit. I think a lot of people say they're doing these challenges. It's like, oh, I worked out. Cool. If you're doing the challenge, you're doing all of it, which is like talk to a stranger. He said he is. I believe him. But I think if you're a coach and you do that every day, it will get you better at coaching. And we're not talking like have a long-winded conversation about their political views and, whatever. It's like, ask them a question, see how they respond, and give yourself feedback on it. Like talk to strangers, get to know them. When you talk to everybody, think about what you're saying, how they're interpreting it. My mentor used to say, with conversation, the person talking is the airplane coming in and the person listening is the runway. And sometimes the airplane's coming in hot. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the runway's closed because there's an accident or there's shitty weather or whatever that is. And you may need to change your course of landing. And I mean, there's no better way to practice that than, with your significant other, right? Like how are they interpreting it?
Right.
I'll give you an example for a real world example. I was like, hey babe, she's away right now. And I was like, Fern and I are going to continue recording on Friday.
How are you doing with that, by the way? You doing all right? You need
I'm
some
doing
tips?
better than you. My internet's working.
Are you?
Wow. Yeah.
Well, if that's your measurement for success as far as single parenthood, then
yeah, Madison shit herself up her back, but my internet's working. Because I was telling the private group.
Yeah, good.
I've learned for her, like when she's cranky, just give her more puffs. She loves those damn puffs. But anyway, I was like, hey Roz, we got to record on Friday and Saturday, and I can tell she was getting annoyed because then I'm leaving and going to Virginia on Sunday to do some work with you, and I was like, is everything all right? Is there something wrong with me recording? And it was just like changing that because immediately I got mad. I'm like, wait, so you're getting mad at me because I have to work, which by the way is what pays our bills and like blah, blah, blah. And she, but then I was like, okay, she's probably upset because I'm leaving and she wants like spend time with me, etc. So you just have to think about how you're delivering it and how that person's interpreting it. And that holds true for your wife, your husband, your partner, a stranger, or someone you're coaching. So practice that. Get out there, talk to
Yeah,
strangers.
Ask questions, right? Because at the heart of it, that's really what a cue is. A cue is just a question that I need some sort of response to. It's okay, push your knees out. That's a question. Is that knee going to move in the direction that I wanted it to? That's what it is. And something will come back. Again, we talked about this, I've said this before. There's no requirement for you to know if a cue is going to work in order to give the cue. That's not what cues are for. Cues are to get information. So again, it's a question in a different form. Like do this. Didn't work. Cool. Now I know that's not going to be the answer. So I shift directions. When COVID was going on, we had that same thing, and people would come in, and you have to very quickly assess like what is their kind of feeling about the mask, no mask type deal. And at which point, like I have to maneuver around that fairly quickly to make this person feel comfortable. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. How is this person interacting with me, with my push to try to get them to do what they need to do to move more efficiently? So it's not about being annoying. All it's about is continue the engagement in whatever form you deem necessary, whether it's giving them an attaboy or attagirl, whether it's cueing them in a different format, whether it's challenging, what kind of effort they're putting in, or giving them some sort of strategy with regard to the movement. But continued engagement is what we're referring to when we're talking about relentless, not being a dick and continuing to annoy people. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. We appreciate you listening and choosing to have us help you in your passion for coaching and affiliate ownership. You can find more episodes just like this on all podcast platforms. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us on any social media platforms, or you can visit www.besthouroftheirday.com to book a call. If you found this episode helpful for you, please share it so that we can help other coaches and affiliate owners to help build a bigger and stronger CrossFit community. Thanks for listening.